This is Geek Gab with your host, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Saturday, March 14th, 2026. And today we are talking about the Action Girls Triple Threat Omnibus Volume just now on Kickstarter. And luckily for our guest today, I don't have any other big news rattling around my brain other than the fact that everything that was going on last week is still going on this week. So if you listen to last week's show or the show before that, AI is still doing the thing where they're snatching up all the RAM. And apparently now people are complaining about them snatching up all the hard drives too, which I didn't know about. And that kind of makes me nervous. And all of the AAA industry is experiencing, people getting laid off and all that. I can't remember who it was. Oh no, I did see this week. This week, Game Designers Conference (GDC) was happening, and apparently the companies have decided abruptly and with malice aforethought that they are just going to be talking about how to make games, and they're not going to be talking about how to stick political messaging in their games. So that's a vast and sudden miraculous new change. And it is a sign of how badly things are going for the industry. So people think that on my Twitter, I go out of my way to always point out when I'm right. And that is absolutely not true. Usually I don't bother to point out when I'm right because otherwise I'd be doing it every single tweet. I usually only bother pointing out when I'm right when I've gotten static from obtuse or arrogant or aggravating people. People who just stubbornly refuse to believe that up is up and down is down and all those things. So a few weeks ago, I posted that, things are going bad in the whole AAA video game venue. And I got a bunch of people saying, video games are on par to become the biggest selling industry in America. And I'm like, well, first off, there are countless numbers of stories about the AAA industry going bad. There's been a massive drawdown in money since COVID. And follow the logic here. When people were locked into their houses locked in, and were literally getting arrested for going to the beach, for taking walks, for going on hikes, for riding bikes, okay? They did things in their houses, like they watched TV, they read books, and they played video games. So, because they played video games more, they spent more. But then one day, COVID ended. Now, when COVID began, they spent more on video games. And then COVID ended. And as an exercise in sheer logic, what do you think happened when COVID ended? Now, you are my audience. You are intelligent and awesome people. You know what happened when COVID ended because you can add 1 and 1 together and get 2. The people I was talking to, they couldn't do that. They just couldn't. So there's been a massive drawdown. And it turns out that in the last 5 years, 33% of developers in the United States in the AAA games industry have been laid off at least once. And some of them have been laid off multiple times because studios just keep failing. And it's not just because COVID shutting down meant there was less money. What happens when money flies out of an industry is all the crap that was being propped up by easy money and easy credit. These games run on loans. The publisher is financing the game by borrowing money because they don't have enough money sitting around just to spend on these games. So they borrow money from banks and then they pay the banks back with the proceeds of either the game or other games that are way more successful. And then whatever's left over is profit. That's how movies work. And sometimes they're not borrowing money directly from games. Sometimes in the movies, they're borrowing money from rich people who want to go to parties with movie stars. Anyway, when things were flush in the game industry, any old piece of crap they could get money for. And they did. And many of them were succeeding. Then they started making crappier and crappier products. Things like Concord and Suicide Squad, Murder the Justice League, or Kill the Justice League, or Slay the Justice, whatever it was. And then they started running out of money. Well, when you have no money, and I want you to relate this to your own finances, which the people I was arguing with just couldn't do. When you run out of money and you run out of credit and you're not willing to literally go into the street and hold people up with guns, what happens? Well, you stop spending money. So, all of these people who are trying to make games have now had to stop spending money on crap. Even Marvel, to jump industries for a bit, even the head of Marvel, Kevin Feige, has said, well, we've just been doing all these movies for the sake of advancing women and stuff. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But now it's time to make money again. So after a decade of producing money, losing, or not quite money-making products, Marvel is being forced to change and go back to making money again. Everybody in the AAA video game space is being forced to sell off to Tencent you sell off parts of their companies to Tencent, not the whole thing, just like 5-10%, Just only that. Those are massive figures, folks. That may not seem that much in terms of stock. That's huge. They're being forced to sell off to Tencent and then go back to making profitable games. And people are saying, oh, this is great. They're talking about not having to go make propaganda anymore. We'll be back to good games, folks. This is all a Warpig was right again, which is a hashtag I have, for the last few weeks of people who were morons, who said, no, that's not true. The industry isn't making less money. Yes, it was making less money. It's making such less money that a third of the people have been laid off. And GDC is talking about no more propaganda. So Warpig was right a few weeks ago, and now I'm going to put you in line for a future prediction. Just because they're not talking about making propaganda doesn't mean they've stopped making propaganda or they will stop making propaganda. It just means they're going to try to get subtler about it. My guess, if you like my prediction, is that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to have a lot of obvious propaganda in it because it's just too late to turn that oil tanker around. And a lot of people are going to be really upset by what happens when that gets released. I just honestly, it's Grand Theft Auto and you can drive cars through the streets. And unless they're just limited to cutscenes, all the pride parades that they've been said to be including in the game, unless it's a cutscene, it's Grand Theft Auto. The people who don't want to see that in their Grand Theft Auto game are going to go Grand Theft Auto on it. That's my prediction. That's going to upset a lot of people. I'm just guessing. But after Grand Theft Auto, and I'm predicting the game is going to be really awful. And whether that's really awful for a Grand Theft Auto game or just really awful, period, I'm predicting it's going to not be a good game. And then, past that, I think that the industry is going to be still pushing ideology, but pushing it in a lot subtler ways. And more importantly, I don't think it's going to matter anymore. We have entered the finding out phase of the last 10, 14 years of software development and propaganda pushing. We have entered the phase where people have just gone off and have started making and consuming alternate stuff. And so whether it's subtle or whether it's blatant, those people who are making propaganda are going to find themselves being caught up in changes that they will no longer have any control over. The time for them to right their ship was when they had a chance to right it when money was flush, because it's too late. Other people are going to be coming along and pushing them out of the way. I think that's going to
Talking about
go.
other people coming along, you do have an author on the show right now.
That's my.
Sorry for interrupting, but I decided
I'm
to
not
take
done.
the
That's
opportunity.
my segue.
Sorry. Okay. I'll let you finish.
That's going to happen in. It's going to happen in comics. It's going to happen in video games. It's going to happen in movies. And it's going to happen in books. And as the segue I was working towards was going to go.
Jump the gun there. Sorry.
We have somebody who's working on alternate fiction opportunities. On the show today, J. Manfred Weichsel. Welcome to
Yes.
the show.
All right. Thank you very much, Daddy Warpig. I'm really happy to be here. I was listening to your rant at the beginning, and you're absolutely right about credit. Generally, when there's like a lot of credit in the economy, there's a lot of production of movies, TV shows, video games, whatever, because those things cost a lot of money to make, and they are made on credit. But then when the economy's bad and things are tight, and the lenders start tightening their belts, there's less money to make those things because movies, video games, those are very risky investments. And, investing, they say like the greater the risk, the greater reward. If you could lose a lot of money making a movie, you could also make like a lot of money making a movie, but it's just most people lose their money. So when there's not a lot of money going around, they're not going to invest in those things. But I do disagree that it's based on like if the economy gets better, there will just be more investing in movies and video games, and if the economy gets bad or worse, there will be less. It's not gonna just balance itself out like that. It's just something predictable that happens when there's a downturn or when the economy is like going really strong. But there is something that's really hurting these industries, which is all of their vertical integration. That's what's really making the movies and TV shows bad. And the books and the video games, but I don't know if you want me to talk about that. But I'm probably here to talk about my own books. But the way it used to work in these industries is you had an independent production company making the movie or the TV show or the video game, and then they would sell it to the distributor, like the television network or the theatrical distributor, the game platform. And so let's say like you're making a TV show, like you would make the pilot of the TV show and you would try to sell it to a network. And if the networks all said, no, this sucks, we don't want to buy it, then, you would have made it for nothing and it would just, sit there and you wouldn't be able to sell it. So your incentive would be to make something, really good that you could sell to the network. But with vertical integration, the people producing the TV pilot and the people who own the network are the same people. So you produce the pilot for the show for the network, and the network doesn't have the option to not buy it. They just have to play it, whether it's good or not. And so the incentive there is just to produce a lot of content because nobody can say no to you. It's not to produce it really good so that they have to say yes. So the incentive structure with all the vertical integration going on right now incentivizes just producing a lot instead of producing something well. So that would be what I would add to that. But yes, I am working on the Kickstarter for my omnibus of my Action Girls trilogy. This is it's called Action Girls Triple Threat, and the first book was published in 2021. That was Jungle Jitters. The second book, Into the Bush, was published in 2024. The third book, Space Escapades, was published very recently in 2025. But what happened was I have this thing. I like to put naked women on the covers of my books, and with those last two books, I went a little bit too far, a little bit further than I did previously, especially in that last one. If you look at the cover, Space Escapades, that was just, it showed everything. And Amazon decided not only to ban Space Escapades, but also to ban Into the Bush. So now I've got this trilogy that's like my magnum opus, that's like my greatest work of literature I've ever produced. And like two-thirds of it are very hard to find. They're still distributed through Ingram Spark, so you can still find the Ingram Spark paperbacks on Amazon, but they're expensive. And the ebook is on godless.com, but it's not on Amazon. So, it's very hard to find. Now, I had planned from the beginning to do an illustrated omnibus of the trilogy, but that was supposed to be like 2 or 3 years after it was published. I was going to go do a Kickstarter to do an illustrated omnibus. But then when the last two ones were banned, like I needed to get those out because like it's ridiculous. I can't just not have my magnum opus available. Like I could die at any time. Like I could die in a car crash. There could be like a terrorist attack. Whatever. They could nuke New York City. I'm a New Yorker, and then like I would die with my magnum opus not available, with no guarantee that it would ever become available. Like I don't have like an August Derleth, who's going to be willing to champion me after my death, or Max Brod, who championed Franz Kafka after his death. I don't have like somebody like that who's going to, take my work and make sure that it remains in print after I'm gone. So I'm responsible for that now while I'm alive. So I want to republish these in a single volume, and I really, really, really want them to be illustrated, because like if you look at the covers of my books, which tend to have illustrations from the stories on the covers, like I'm really into coming up with ideas for scenes from my books that would look good as illustrations. And in my Scandal anthology series, I've been experimenting with internal in illustrations, which have gone over very well. People have reacted very well to them, and people are very happy with them. And so, what I want to do is I want to do that for instead of for an anthology that I edit, for my own book and for my own trilogy, and I want to get it out that way. So, I'm raising money right now on Kickstarter to pay a wonderful artist named Alina Aminetti. She illustrated the interior of the anthology Jungle Scandals, which I edited. She did a really terrific job. So I know that I want her on this book, but of course, like she's can't do it for free. She's a real artist. And by real artist, I mean, you were talking about AI before and AI art. Alina, she works on, paper by hand, and she draws everything by hand. Like she did the girls on the cover of the omnibus. If you look at my profile picture right now on this chat, my avatar, it is, Jennifer, which she drew, the lead action girl. The only thing that's digital in that is the coloring. The rest is by hand on paper, and it looks fantastic. And I know that the interior illustrations are going to look fantastic too. But, of course, I need to raise that money on Kickstarter in order to pay her, or else, it's not going to happen. So that is what I'm working on right now. And, I really hope that, that this Kickstarter succeeds so that I can put the book out exactly how I want to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, so this is just to get the trilogy sort of in print again.
It's to get it illustrated. If the Kickstarter fails,
Oh, really?
yeah, if the Kickstarter fails and and I can't get the illustrations, I'll just publish it without illustrations. The Kickstarter's to pay for illustrations. I got a $3,000 goal for the Kickstarter. Kickstarter takes 10% of that, so after 3,000, that leaves me with 2,700. Olino's fee for doing the illustrations as well as the cover will come out to 1,400. So I'm paying her more than half of the Kickstarter. The rest of that fee, the Kickstarter campaign is for fulfillment and for formatting and stuff like that, but mostly fulfillment. So none of it goes to me, and putting out a book. On print on demand doesn't cost much. Like I have to publish it to fulfill the Kickstarter, and that costs money. But if the Kickstarter fails, I'll just put it on print on demand and get it out that way without
Um,
illustrations.
the I don't know that I want to go this direction, but it is frustrating to me how many people have I mean, honestly, I can understand about the blue cover. Why?
Yeah.
Why Amazon?
The Space Escapades cover.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I went a little
I
too
don't.
far.
I don't understand why they would go back and take down a cover they'd already accepted.
Because, well, they accepted the Space Escapades cover too. It took them a couple weeks to ban it. And then when they banned it, they just, decided to be jerks and ban another one too. Like Amazon is a giant bureaucracy where, one part doesn't necessarily know what the other part is doing. One hand doesn't know what the other is doing, they say. So, it's just luck of the draw. It's just like who's looking at it right now and who's making these decisions right now. And, eventually, like, I publish my covers. It's like playing Russian roulette each time I do it. And eventually I just pulled the wrong trigger. That's all it was. And, like, they're jerks. Like, with Amazon, like, and a lot of these tech companies, like, a lot of what they're doing is being taken over by artificial intelligence. It used to be like working at Amazon, people who worked there they constantly had to write. They had to write everything that they did in like a report. And, through the act of writing, as a writer, I know, and I'm sure like writing is communication, but it's also learning. When you write something down, like you learn about it. Like when I did my mythological adaptation, The Caledonian Boar Hunt, I learned a ton about Greek mythology just by writing about Greek mythology. And the people who work at Amazon were learning a lot by writing a lot. But today, when it's AI doing the writing and also AI reading the writing that's being done, nobody's learning anything. So they don't really communicate with each other anymore, and they don't know what they're doing. So just because one person approved the cover, a second person could see that cover and decide to undo what the person before them had done, and there's no communication between the two parties.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because they've automated the process.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
thinking about it anymore.
And everybody's like atomized, like like they're not working together anymore. They're all working separately. And
That, that is too bad.
yeah.
Um, I as far as this book goes, it is a trilogy, so it has three books in it.
Yeah.
And the newest book, and so the book that's probably received the least amount of attention so far, plus because it got pulled so quickly, is Space Escapades.
Yeah.
Um, so why don't we go ahead and talk about that one first? What is Space Escapades about?
All right. So, Space Escapades is the final book in the Action Girls trilogy. And these books, the books 2 and 3, have me as a character. I'm the screenwriter for the Action Girls, who are a trio of wannabe Hollywood starlets who go off and, make movies, and their failed movie shoots turn into wild pulp adventures. So, in Space Escapades, I'm working on a movie called Space Escapades, which is going to be this wild science fiction film shot in Griffith Park. But while we're shooting the movie in Griffith Park, the girls are kidnapped and transported to outer space by a real space witch who wants to get revenge on them for reasons that aren't revealed until the end of the book. So she transports them to outer space, and they have a really wild outer space adventure. Every time they're teleported from one place to another, they wind up naked because that's what happens when you're teleported to an alien planet. Just ask John Carter. And they go on like jungle adventures and like wild, like torture planets. And while they're in outer space having this adventure, Manfred is left stranded on Earth. So, he's stranded in 2016, and without the action girls, no one will work with Manfred anymore. So his Hollywood career crashes and burns because he failed to make the movie Space Escapades. No one will give him money to make another movie after he lost the money to make the first movie, right? Just as you said, like if you make the money, if you're somebody gives you the money to make a movie and you lose that money, then the person isn't going to give you money to make another movie because they're just throwing good money after bad, right? So he's destitute. No one will work with him. So in 2018, he moves from Los Angeles to New Jersey and tries to become an attorney. He's failing miserably at that. And then COVID happens. And when COVID happens, he's locked in his room and he starts writing pulp novels. And he writes all of the novels which I wrote, Ibu Gogo, Five Maidens on the Pentagram, and the Action Girls books. But he kind of slowly goes insane and gets caught up in, like, all of this online propaganda on Twitter, and it pushes him to take very very wrong choices in his writing career, which leads to his writing career stalling. But then in 2023, the Action Girls return to Earth, and they need Manfred's help to finally defeat the Space Witch because only he has the knowledge which can defeat the Space Witch. He doesn't know what that knowledge is, but he lets the Action Girls take him to outer space so that he can finally defeat the Space Witch, who is bent on destroying Earth. So he saves Earth, returns to Earth while the Action Girls remain in outer space, and he writes Into the Bush and Space Escapades. But then at the very end, he learns that everything was based on an even bigger lie that he wasn't even aware of, and that it was all for nothing. And I think I gave the whole plot without any spoilers there. I might have been a little vague in parts, but that's basically the plot. The outer space adventure is pretty wild. They are like transported to, like, jungle planets and like space stations, and with all these different aliens with like weird different colored skin, like plaid aliens and polka dotted aliens and striped aliens, and there's a lot of drinking too. Like everybody in outer space is pretty much like they spend all their time at like space station bars getting hammered.
Um, and so it is a true sequel um, to the first two books.
Not really. They're partially sequels. In book two, book one exists as a movie in book two, and in book three, books one and two exist in movies. But in each one, it's like the Action Girls who made the movies. So Into the Bush is so Space Escapade starts with the Action Girls and Manfred. They're going to the premiere of Into the Bush. That's how Space Escapade starts. But the premiere is just release day at Best Buy because it's a straight to DVD movie, and this is 2016. So they go to Best Buy early in the morning, Tuesday, just when it opens, because Tuesday was the release day for DVDs and other merchandise, back in the day. So they go right to the bargain bin, and they hunt around the bargain bin for the movie. They can't find it. They think they're failures, but then they realize that Into the Bush made it up onto the shelf, and so they go, find it on the shelf, and they realize that they're big successes. And so it starts out with them being successes because of the success of Into the Bush.
Okay,
Um, so Into the Bush, I guess I should probably talk about.
sure.
Yeah. So
Now,
in,
obviously, this is these are comedic books.
Correct. I write satire. My books are meant to be funny. And that's, I think, something like people right now are not used to humor. They're not accustomed to having like humor in their entertainment. Everything is very serious right now, and everything is very dark and very just like, like straightforward. There's very little irony right now in anything. And my books are satires in the classical sense, like Gargantua and Pantagruel by Francois Rabelais, uh, Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Stern, Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. My books are written in that tradition. A True History by Lucian. So like the tradition of just really classical satire, which like the old satires. Were wild experimental books that took place in fantastical worlds, and they made fun of general human traits, venality, vices, and stuff like that. Bigotry, whatever. So that's what my books, are written in that tradition. They're meant to be funny, and they're not. I mean, they're serious books. Like the old satires are very serious, but they're not meant to be taken seriously. If that makes sense. They're not like like a lot of what goes on is like really pretentious right now. Everything is very literal. There's like this literalism in movies and books and TV shows, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm very much a man outside of his times.
It, if I could indulge in a bit of cultural criticism for a
Yeah.
moment, it is exceedingly strange that we have a large slice of the population who demands that not only does every hero in every time period believe the same things they do in modern America, whether it's in the past or the future, an alternate history, or just a different planet where magic is real or whatever, but that also all the villains do as well. Um, and I find that just like really odd. Um,
Yeah. I guess like sometimes they say like the only reason to write about the past is to write about the present. But there's no critique of the present in when they're writing about the past. Like when people said that, like, the reason to write about the past is to critique something about the present that you couldn't say by talking about the present because it's too much for people to take. But you don't see that at all. It's just it's blatant like propaganda. Like you could like I mean, I'm being silly here, but like you could go into a story about like imperial Rome and have them talk about like the rules based order and how it's under threat, or but that would actually be kind of funny. I might do that in a book one day. um but uh you're right. Like people today like seem to have like a very narrow view of things. Okay. So like I do background acting, and this is like a weird story. But like, when you're acting, there's some place called holding where you go when you're not shooting. And I was doing this background show like about a year ago, and holding was in this country western themed bar. It was like this like old west themed bar. And on the TV, and this is like early in the morning, but like on the TV, the regular programming was playing, and it was this old Western show from the 60s. I forget the name now, but if you've watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's the show that the show Leonardo DiCaprio is in is based on. It's a very famous show, and it was playing on the TV, and it was playing silently. And I was sitting there looking up to it, and there was a girl sitting next to me watching it too. And she kind of looked it up on IMDb and found the name of the show, and all about it. And she said, "Oh, it's set in the 1880s and wherever in the West, and it's about this." And so, that was interesting. So there was an episode on the show, and Abraham Lincoln on it. And she looked up at it and she said, "Hey, is that Abraham Lincoln?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it is Abraham Lincoln." We were watching it silently with no sound, so you had to figure out what was going on just by watching it. So I said, "But that's odd. What would Abraham Lincoln be doing in the 1880s?" And she shrugged her shoulders and said, "Well, he lived in the 1800s, didn't he?" And I said, "Well, yes, but he was assassinated in the 1864." And she said, "Really? I didn't know that. That's very interesting." And she didn't know that Abraham Lincoln had been assassinated. But then she went on IMDb, found the episode, and she said, "Oh, you're right. He's like a guy who thinks he's Abraham Lincoln. It's about like a crazy guy who dresses as Abraham Lincoln." I'm like, "Oh, well, that makes sense." But then so she has the ability to research stuff. Like she knows how to go on IMDb and look up like TV shows and episodes of TV shows just based on watching them silently. But then why doesn't she know that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated? Or, anything about him other than like how he looked? Like, that's very strange. But it's not that unusual. A lot of our history or is just being lost. And younger people don't really know it. Like, I mean, like on X when the first trailer for Nolan's Odyssey came out, and there was all these people surprised that there was a book written 2,000 years ago. Like they didn't know such a thing was possible. That's not just an online phenomenon. Like that's something like you'll just bump into if you spend a lot of time like around younger people. And she was probably Gen Z, so she was probably 23, around that age. But just has to do with, I guess, COVID lockdowns, not a lot of school, just not a lot of education. Like people like to knock school nowadays, but you really do need it in order to just have basic knowledge like that. And even if you think you're somebody who can, come up with your own basic knowledge or, do a lot of self learning, like you still have the right to live in a society where other people know basic facts like that. And, that means universal education because otherwise, like, you're just depriving me of the right to live in a country where people know basic historical facts about, like, how that country came to be. And we don't live in such a country right now. Yeah.
Um, our culture used to be built just implicitly. It used to be assumed to be built as a matter of habit, as a matter of um, mores and traditions that people just did. They didn't think about it. It wasn't like consciously taught to them. They just did it because it's what everybody did. Um, Used to be built on continuity with the past.
Yeah.
Uh, but for a long time, and I'm going to pick, it may be as long as since the 90s, or maybe even starting small earlier, but got critical mass in the 2000s. Um, Brian Niemeyer likes to say 1997, and it may be part of what happened in the late 90s is is a more or less total break with um, our culture reinforcing the past of our own culture. If you see what I'm saying, there
Yeah.
is no longer a continuity of experience or an assumed level of uh, where you converse with what happened in the past, and then the material not only assumes that, but also reinforces that and sort of um, you can learn things explicitly at school, but you can
Mhm.
also learn things as or at least have them reinforced as a gradual drip, drip, drip from thousands of different places. And when the totality of culture is reinforcing those things, it helps remind people of them. It helps bring them along.
Sure, and you could say that I did a positive thing by teaching the girl that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated.
Yeah, it,
And you could say that that's part of that.
but our culture no longer does that in the main. Our culture no longer um, reinforces those things. It's completely focused on other things. And I think that what happened is that the people who are making culture right now, um, or at least overseeing the making of culture right now, just have a complete disdain and even hatred for American culture. And so
Mm.
they are consciously choosing not to do it.
No, I don't think that. I think it's just like the people who are making American culture. Maybe they don't know that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated either. It's just like the things perpetuate themselves. Like the people making the culture are the people who are part of the culture. And in like '97 is when the vertical integration started. It's when it started with the cable networks, being able to produce their own content, and there's an incentive towards like the new, and there's a and like an economic incentive towards just like producing a lot that's new, and that does tend to bury like like what's past, like something like 90 like I read once 90% of all silent films are lost. They just weren't preserved. If you look at TV, most of the first decade of television is lost. The Dumont network was one of the major original TV networks, and of their entire programming, the only show that exists in its entirety is The Honeymooners. Everything else is lost. There's like the first sci-fi series, like there's like one episode that exists. Like the first like detective series, there's like random like still videos and random clips. And the reason that they're lost is because back then they would record the episode on the East Coast. They would record it and they would play it live on the East Coast, and then they would use the recording to play it on the West Coast, and then they would delete the recording and they would record over the same tape, and they would just keep on deleting it and recording over it over and over because they didn't understand that there was any point in like keeping like a permanent record of it. They just thought it was something disposable that they were doing, and the Dumont network did preserve recorded records of everything that it produced, unlike the other networks. So after it closed, they put them in a warehouse in the East River, and they remained sitting in the warehouse until the 1970s. Then in the 1970s, nobody wanted to pay the bill to keep all the recordings of the shows from the Dumont network there, so they were all dumped into the East River. So they went from the warehouse to being dumped, and that was in the mid 70s. And that's well before 1997 or whatever. It's just they didn't take that culture seriously. They didn't think that there was any economic value in keeping it alive, so nobody wanted to pay for it, so they dumped it in the river, and it's still in the bottom of the East River today. Theoretically, a diver could go down there and recover whatever tapes he could, bring them back up, see if they were working, use like modern AI to restore whatever gaps existed from being underwater for 50 years, and you could probably even restore them today, but nobody wants to. It's in nobody's interest. So I don't think there's like some new conspiracy like against culture. I think it's always been viewed as fluff. Like, I come from a family of professionals. None of them take my writing seriously, and none of them take my acting seriously. It's not serious. What's serious are like, like not like CDs with music, but like CDs at the bank. Like that's what's serious, and like or like a bond or something. That's what's serious, and that's what they really focus on with like their intellectual capacities are focused on that. Like it's just a different mindset. Like either you're into culture and you like it, or you don't and you're not. And the people who are making decisions in our society aren't people who take it very seriously. Like they view it as just like whatever, disposable. Like in the Epstein files, like one of the ways that Epstein lured young girls into his orbit was offering them jobs as extras in Woody Allen movies. And Woody Allen let him do that from 2010 until he cut him off in 2017. Um, and a bunch of movies where the background was cast by Jeffrey Epstein calling in for a favor to get his girls on the movie sets. Um, you really must have like a very low opinion of like motion pictures as an art form in order to exploit them like that. But like people in the industry were exploiting it all the time. Harvey Weinstein was doing it, and a ton of others were in there. They were making movies, and you think they take them very seriously, but they obviously don't, because they're using them to for other ends, for their own satisfaction. And like a lot of people in finance, that's the part of the industry that they see. Like if you're a fan watching these movies and enjoying them, then like, you know, there's some joy there, and you enjoy the movie. Or if you're more into like intellectual movies, then like you like the movies make you think, and that they and or that they move you emotionally, or that they're just gorgeous to look at. But behind that, that there's other people looking at them in different ways, which is like, if you've seen the movie Mulholland Drive, that's basically what Mulholland Drive is about. Like there's like the surface, and then there's everything below the surface. And what the people who you're talking about, like that they're really seeing either what's below the surface, or they don't appreciate or what is on the surface. Like they don't have like an appreciation for movies as an art form, or as a form of entertainment or anything like that. They just think it's something disposable that like you can dump in the East River. And I don't think that that's new. Like it's the same with the silent movies. Like 90% of them are lost just because nobody thought to preserve them. Like they just discovered a new Méliès short, like just a 60-second short, like in a
Yeah,
trunk somewhere. And it's the
I watched
first,
that.
yeah, me too. And it's the first robot on film, in like 1901 or two or three or something like that. And they just
Grand
discovered it.
Rapids, Michigan. It was in a garage in Grand
Huh,
Rapids, Michigan.
yeah. So I mean, I think there's like different ways to, look at this. I do reject like the whole grand conspiracy theory. It's just a lot of people with competing motives, and different attitudes towards culture. And they're all kind of, wrapped up. Like there was a system that produced culture in this country, and that system fell apart. And but it always will. It'll always fall apart, and it'll always come back and be reborn too, because there's always going to be like a need for a culture, and it'll come back. But it's a system that is slowly like degrading. It's not a grand conspiracy. Yeah.
I think, and this is a little bit of a change of a subject. I think people who don't, there's, and I'm going to take a step back from like, I don't know, high culture. Um, what people are talking about when they talk about, the great works of Western civilization, whatever.
Hmm.
Let's set those aside. Let's talk about pop culture.
Yeah.
Because one of the big things in my life has always been pop culture.
Hmm.
But that's because I've always loved pop culture.
Yeah.
Um, I love music. I love movies. I love TV shows. I love comics. Um, I love video games. Um, and I love them to a degree that uh, they are they're not just something I do to pass the time. They're not just a hobby. The As forms of uh, media, they are my passion, not just watching them or listening to them, but what they are, how people make them, understanding them, thinking about them. I love everything about them. Um, and unlike a lot of people who get all head up about them and say, oh, yeah, rock and roll will save the world, or this TV show is important, and they use capital I's there. I don't believe that pop culture will save the world.
Hmm.
I believe that debased culture can destroy a society, but I don't believe that a pop culture can save a society. Um, and a debased culture won't destroy a society on its own either. It can just do a lot to undermine it. But I see pop culture in a way that all of these serious people don't. I don't think they understand because it's like how a fish doesn't understand water. Not just because or how people before Isaac Newton didn't understand gravity. Okay, that's a perfect example. Before Isaac Newton, people didn't understand gravity. It surrounded them all the time, it affected them every single instant of their lives. Their entire body was built the way it was because of gravity. Their heart, their circulatory system, their muscles, their skeletons, trees, the ground, mountains, rain, oceans, rivers, the animals they hunted, everything was affected by gravity. But it was so commonplace. It was surrounded them. It interpenetrated them so much they didn't think about it. And
Sure.
they didn't understand it. That's pop culture to serious people. And what I think the serious people don't understand is they've never stopped to realize that during moments in their life in which things have gone seriously sideways, in which the roof of their life is collapsing in on them, the fact that a stupid little sit gave them 5 minutes of laughter, they don't have the experiential base. It hasn't happened to them often enough, or they don't have the knowledge base. They've never studied stress and how stress operates in the human body over long periods of time. Um, they don't understand how critically important that moment was to maintaining their health and maintaining their mental functioning over long periods of time. It just came and it just went, and they don't understand that what just happened saved them from days or weeks or even years of pain and agony and physical breakdown
Mm.
because it was just there and they felt better and they think, oh, I just felt a little bit better. I laughed a little bit. And they don't even think about it because their problems are still there afterwards. So they think, well, it didn't make my problems go away. So, it didn't do me any good. And I've talked about this before. I don't want to go into it, but stress accumulates on a linear basis the longer a stressor, and a stressor is something that adds stress to your life. Doesn't matter if it's physical or mental, emotional, whatever. They all operate the same way in causing a physiological reaction in your body. And so, as long as the stressor is pregnant, you can view it as line goes up. It just goes up and up and up and up and up. And the higher it goes, it puts wear and tear on your heart, it puts wear and tear on your immune system, and it puts wear and tear on various other things around your body. It adds fatigue, it makes it hard to sleep, makes you irritable and snappish. It makes it hard to deal with other sources of stress, things like that, whatever. And it can literally put you in the hospital, it can make you sick, shortens years off your life, all these things that you don't necessarily realize, because as that stress is going up, these bad things begin to accumulate. Things get really serious.
Yeah,
People literally have collapsed and been, basically uh, handicapped for years or decades because of stress that did not alleviate.
sure.
But that 5 minutes of laughter, what it does is it completely resets your stress. Your problems do not go away, but that line that's going up immediately drops to zero.
Yeah.
And then it starts going up again once you're done. That's fine. But that moment, that 5 minutes of entertainment saved you from that line going up past 100 or past 1,000 or past 500,000. It drops you to zero, and then stress starts accumulating again. It just gave you the fortitude to get through another day.
Yeah.
That's that's how critical entertainment is. That's why culture, even stupid little pop culture, is important to individual people, even when they themselves don't know it. It saves their health, saves their relationships.
I mean, you're right, and I don't want to be like overly negative, but there's a problem with that, which is that like if the people who are causing the stress are also the same people giving you that 5 minutes of alleviation, like that causes a problem. Like let's imagine like I'm a plantation owner in Antebellum South, and I've got the slaves and I work them very hard in the fields and whip them if they don't pick enough cotton, and then at the end of the day, I let them sit around and sing hymns and tell jokes for like 30 minutes before bed. And then, like, you say, well, those jokes and those hymns, they help you get through the next day. But, I'm also the one causing like the misery of the next day, too. Like pop culture, is like, it used to be like individuals created their own culture. Like, they would sit around the dinner table and tell stories to each other. And then radio came along, and instead of telling stories to each other, they listened to other people tell stories on the radio while they sat in silence and listened to those stories. And around that same time, the pulp magazines came out, so they could sit around in silence and read pulp magazines. And then, later television. And these inventions coincided with people playing less of a role in like civic life. When TV started to become ubiquitous in the 50s and 60s, that's really when people stopped participating in group activities. It's when the religious decline happened in America, started in America. It's when participation in clubs and other groups started to decline. And the more these technologies have permeated our lives, the less culture people have been creating on their own, and the more that they've been consuming. Um, it's like if you work at Amazon, like let's say like you believe in like meditation. Let's just forget about culture for a second. Say like meditation can help alleviate stress and can help get that cortisol level down and activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's great. So let's say you work at like Amazon and you're working at a sweatshop, and everything is like very rigid, like on the clock, like like you have a 5 minute bathroom break, and if you go above that 5 minutes, then we're going to dock your pay. So you're working at Amazon and everything is very rigid on the clock, and then they stop everything for like a meditation session, which they do. If you're on your computer working at Amazon, the meditation icon is going to pop up and it's time to meditate now, and you're going to get a message that says like, I'm very grateful to be working at Amazon, and then you repeat, I'm very grateful to be working at Amazon, and that's your positive affirmation for the day. But are you really grateful for to be working at Amazon, or is that just a way to alleviate the stress instead of Amazon just making itself a less stressful environment?
The point I'm making is that people who don't take culture seriously
Yeah.
don't realize how important it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is important, and and it's important for the reasons that you mentioned too. It helps, lighten the load of the day. It also makes people think, and makes people look at the world in a different way and question their own assumptions and viewpoints. And storytelling, art, culture, movies, books. They're very powerful things, and they're also being suppressed in our society, and in ways that are hard to see, like with books. Like there are more books than there have ever been, but in a way that's part of how the books are being suppressed. There's so much out there, and so much of it is AI produced slop, or something that you would never read, and it reduces the discoverability of any individual book. Unless the creator is constantly shouting about it on social media, nobody's going to hear about it unless they have a big marketing team behind them that's able to spread the word about the book, like a Penguin Random House book, or a book from Doubleday. They might have like multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns pushing that book into the public consciousness. As an actor, like I'm in a lot of series that are based on books, and the books, they're published, they have big audiences, and they make TV shows about those books, miniseries, that those audiences go and watch. But how do those, like, the books, they become popular because they're published by big publishing companies that have a lot of muscle behind them. Like one of my books doesn't have the opportunity, at least right now, to become popular enough to have a movie or a mini series based on it. And so, that there is, am I being suppressed? I'm not sure, but well, I am because two of my books were banned, but I'm also being buried beneath a lot of content. Like the internet. Like people think like the internet gives you all of these connections to the world and makes it easy for creators to get their work out. But what the internet really does is make like those contacts that you have, the real world contacts, even more important. Like I don't have the contacts that I would need to, publish a book traditionally and to get it made into a miniseries. That doesn't mean I never will. I could make those contacts. I could meet those people. But right now, at least, I don't know those people. So, I mean, I agree with you, but I think there's a lot, going on in the whole culture and the system and the way it works. And what one of the ways the system keeps people down is by keeping them from understanding how it works. And that's where the conspiracy theories come from. They come from people not understanding how things work and needing to develop ways to explain them. And unless the way that you're explaining how the world works corresponds with reality, you're going to go off in the wrong direction. Like the ability to see the world as it really is called epistemological rationality. Um, and unless you have that, you're not going to succeed in the real world. So when you're online and you see like all of these theories about how the real world works, and then you model your behavior based on those theories, then you're going off in the wrong direction, and you're not going in a direction that's going to lead to success. You're going in one that's going to lead someplace other than success. So I think the most important skill right now to succeed is just understanding the world and how it works. Because unless like if you're like your map is wrong, then no matter how good your map reading skills are, you're still going to go in the wrong direction because of the map.
All right. Well, we are almost
Oh shit! I
out
forgot to
of
talk
time.
about my book. Um, Please support my Kickstarter.
I've included a link to the Kickstarter in the description of the show. So you can just go right under the video and click on the link, and that'll take you um, right to the Kickstarter where you can buy a copy of Action Girls. You can buy a copy and enjoy it yourself. Um, I have I bought a copy
Yes, thank you, Daddy
already
Wicked. Yes.
that I am looking forward to, um, and I've also bought. Uh, actually, I've bought copies of everything you've published. So,
Wow. Wow.
um,
Well, thank you. Yeah. So
um,
I should talk about these a little bit, actually. So, the action girls. How much time do I have? Do I have any time at all?
sure,
Yeah, okay. So the Action Girls are a trio of wannabe starlets whose failed movie shoots, turn into these wild pulp adventures. And, these books are wild satire. They're experimental, just like the old Menippean satires were, the old ancient Roman satires. And they're also very personal because I'm a character in them. So they have this auto-fictional bent. But the first book, Jungle Jitters, is a jungle adventure, and it's about the girls. Think that they've landed this jungle adventure show and they're really excited. But instead of landing a jungle adventure show, they're actually being trafficked into the Congo, where there's a cult of mad scientists who are descended from a real life Soviet mad scientist named Ilya Ivanovich. Um, Il- a real life Soviet mad scientist who wanted in the 1920s to create a hybrid race by mating humans with chimpanzees. So,
Yeah.
what his descendants now in the Congo do is they traffic Hollywood starlets to the Congo in order to carry out these grotesque experiments, mating them with chimpanzees. They've also developed a really weird cult around, like a religious revivalist cult around the idea of creating a hybrid species, and it is a very well thought out, philosophy that they have that's also very misguided, and the girls get caught up in that, and it's too much for a lot of people. A lot of people can't read this section because it's so, hardcore and disturbing. But that's the book. Book two, Into the Bush. In that book, Jungle Jitters is a movie which the Action Girls have produced with Manfred, and they premiere it at their film festival called the Action on Girls Festival. So they premiered the movie at their own film festival, and they're very happy with how successful it is. So Manfred comes up with the idea for the next movie, which is called Into the Bush. Now, in this world, there's a giantess named Patty McLoop who's 300 miles tall. She is lying on her back in the middle of the desert with her right foot in, let's see, her body goes through Nevada, her head is in Utah, I think her left foot is maybe in Arizona or is in California. Maybe her left arm is in Arizona. I forget now. But she's like taking up like several U.S. states, and she's lying on her back, and her pubic hair region is teeming with all of these bacteria, fleas, ticks, crabs, all these things that were living on her body when she was enlarged into a giantess, and they enlarged too, and they have like the savage society there. So Manfred wants to go and explore it and make a movie about it. So he brings the girls to the giant exclusion zone and brings them to her pubic hair region, but before they go up, he gets fired. He gets fired because they found a new producer who is in love with Jennifer and who's financing the movie. And this new producer doesn't want Manfred to be a part of it because he's jealous. So Manfred gets drunk, he drives, and he gets pulled over and arrested. And he goes to jail. So the girls have this adventure in the pubic hair area with the villain Cletus, but he gets a little bit too much for them, and they need help. So they call Manfred just as he's being let out of jail. He goes to the lot. He pays the money to get his car back. He goes and goes on his own adventure to rescue the girls. And then I already told you about Space Escapades, before, but it picks up with Into the Bush being a movie. The giantess isn't real. The interior of the vagina is just styrofoam painted pink, and it's all just special effects. So that is the trilogy. I spent a long time writing it. The first book was published in 2021. The last book was published in 2025. So that's a good, 4 or 5 years, depending on how you want to look at it. They're unlike anything that you've ever read in your life. They're also very visual, and Alina's illustrations are going to really bring them to life and make the book even better than it would have been before. So I really hope that the Kickstarter succeeds, so that I can get the book illustrated and have those illustrations for you all. And yeah, that's about it. I think I'm gonna announce some more, about the book later in like the campaign updates. I think I'm gonna write like some. If the Kickstarter succeeds, I think I'm gonna write another book called Action Girls. It's gonna be called Deleted Scenes and Broken Dreams, and it's gonna be short stories set within the Action Girls universe, like deleted scenes from books and like unfinished films and stuff like that. And it'll go on the back of Triple Threat only if the campaign funds. If not, then I'm not going to write it and it won't ever be published. So I'm going to announce that soon. Elena, is also working on a sample interior illustration so that you can all see what they're going to look like and get an idea. But, I hope that you go and back the campaign now, because it really does need your help in order to succeed. And, it's going to be a really great book. Thank you so much for listening.
All right, folks. I want to thank everyone who tuned in live. I want to thank everyone who will tune in later. This has been Geek Gab for Saturday, March 14th, 2026. Please go back to Kickstarter. Link is in the description. We are signing out for today, folks, but don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.
All right. Thank you, everybody.